Hi everybody, I'm Andrea and welcome back to my BookTube channel. Today I'm going to be doing a Q&A and announcing a giveaway winner. If you checked out my last video, I had a giveaway going on. Those entries have now closed and I will be announcing the winner at the end of this one. So if you want to know the answer or you're curious, just skip to the end. Time for the questions themselves. I'm going to try to go somewhat quickly on them because there's a lot of them. So let's get started. Okay, number one, if you could live in any TV show, which would it be and what fictional book character would you bring to that show with you or as a rival or a sidekick? So I've been watching WandaVision a lot lately and I really enjoy where it's going and what kind of, I guess, weirdness it has to bring to the table. It's a weird show and I just enjoy weird shows is what I'm saying. So I would want to be in that show and I'd take Rin from the Poppyware series with me because she's a very powerful character who is oftentimes motivated by her rage and grief, and I think that Wanda is a character that is also motivated by her rage and grief, and they're both very strong and have the potential to either clash or just burn down the world together, and I would just love to see that play out on screen. What is the most memorable book you have ever read? Mine is one of my favorite books, Kingdom of the Wicked. So this is a difficult question because I think technically I guess all the books that I enjoy are memorable. So I chose some books that I read in school because I feel like when you are forced to read a book, they often they don't stick to your mind. But these books have stood the test of time and have remained in my mind in the years since I graduated, K through 12. So my picks are Crime and Punishment and The Bell Jar. So I think these books are both kind of depressing books actually. But I really liked them when I read them in school. And they're books that I'm constantly thinking back to and referencing. Cynthia from Bookwoman's asks, there is a book darker than tender is the flesh. My favorite question to ask readers is, what inspires you? Especially given all the film you are watching, is there anything you have found inspirational? I think everything and everyone is inspirational. I think everyone has the potential to inspire you in whatever you're working on, whether that be like art or music or film or writing or whatever. I think everybody has that, can leave a mark on you is what I'm saying. But when I write, whether that be like for journalism or write creatively on my own, I really listen to music a lot. I'm a big music person, so I'll make these giant playlists that nobody else ever hears to help me write. And I usually kind of like alternate between these really like pop-centric 2000s girl songs and like really obscure indie music. Yeah, but in film, anything that can give me an existential crisis, anything that can kind of reframe the way I think of the world, I find incredibly inspirational. And I think that's why I kind of gravitate towards sci-fi fantasy genres in film and TV, is because I like when they pose these really giant philosophical, like moralistic questions, and they really make you think and just sit and kind of have an internal debate with your own mind about, the ethics of whatever's happening on the TV show. So yeah, that's what I would say. What is your favorite book genre? Fantasy, historical, or contemporary, etc.? Again, my favorite genre is science fiction, fantasy, or at least I like to think it's science fiction and fantasy, but I read a lot of, or I mostly read contemporary adult fiction because I'm a loser. Next question, which was your first book? I wouldn't be able to tell you that. I don't know. Probably a picture book. Probably something Disney. I wouldn't know. Next question, how do you get out of a reading slump? How do you choose which books to read each month? Which is a great question. So I get out of a reading slump by reading fan fiction. I'll go to AO3 and literally just read what I want to read, because the thing I like about AO3 and fan fiction is that you can pick very specific tropes, genres, universes, or whatever pairings, and you get hundreds or at least a substantial amount of literature, of fiction to read from, and I really enjoy that kind of accessibility, I guess I could say. And the next part is, how do you choose what books to read each month? Honestly, a lot of it has to do with the amount of arcs I have. I do read a lot of advanced reader copies of books, and if I'm behind on a bunch of arcs, then I'll prioritize those arcs because I have them and I don't want to be wasting that much money on new books. So I read those. And if I have any library picks, I'll read those that were on hold or whatever. But if it's a free month and I have a free schedule, I prioritize books usually based on what I hear my friends are reading and are enjoying and are suggesting to me. Usually they are pretty much on the same wavelength as I am. And I do that. And then I try to just read really the big variety. You know, I try to choose books that aren't exactly the same each month because I want to give myself that variety in books over the course of the year. The next question is, what are your most anticipated movies coming out this year? Thank you for asking this question, Jocelyn. Number one is The Green Knight, and I know it's one of Jocelyn's most anticipated as well, but it stars Dev Patel, who is one of my favorites, and is a fantasy retelling of the medieval tale of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and I'm very excited because he wears a crown and he has a throne. I also really want to watch Candyman, which is directed by Nia DaCosta, and it's the direct sequel to the original Candyman. It stars so many amazing actors. It stars Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, Coleman Domingo, Teyana Paris, Nathan Lloyd Stewart Jarrett, and many other recurring people. And I'm so excited for this because I know it's going to be really good. It's a horror movie and my heart wants and needs it. I'm really excited for Pinocchio by Guillermo del Toro. It is a stop motion version of Pinocchio and it's like dark fantasy. I'm a really big Del Toro fan. I'm also very excited for Zola, which is supposed to come out this year. And Zola is based off of this massive Twitter thread that came out a couple of years ago. And it was just this really engaging story that follows an eclectic group of characters, I guess you could say, in Florida. It has Riley Keough, I don't know how to say her last name, Elvis's granddaughter, Nicholas Brown. Also has Coleman Domingo, and Taylor Page plays the main character, I believe. I really wanted to watch Dune too. I don't really care for the storyline in Dune, but the aesthetics of it look amazing, and it has Oscar Isaac. So I'm probably going to be watching. And what is an author-director mashup for your dream adaptation? I thought about this question a lot. And the first one that came to mind is Taika Waititi with something Shakespearean like Midsummer's Night's Dream, because I think they are at equal layers of like chaos. And I think he would take it and destroy it and remold it into something amazing and funny and brilliant, and I would watch that in a heartbeat, is what I'm saying. I also would love to see a team up of Barry Jenkins and Lulu Wang for like basically any Elizabeth Acevedo book, just because Barry Jenkins is really good at adapting material and he really knows how to hone in into the soul of the book or play that he is adapting. I think he really does a great job at visualizing emotions and kind of conveying the emotions from what the source material into the screenplay itself, into the dialogue. I think he does an amazing job at that. He's so good at love stories too, and just his films are always so like romantic, if you know what I mean. And then Lulu Wang, I loved her work in The Farewell, and I think especially with an Acevedo book that deals with like this coming of age story, and it deals with like these female characters that are kind of coming into their own. I think that she would really know how to capture that and translate it on screen. So I would love to see them team up. Next question, what is your favorite childhood book? I have a lot of childhood favorite books. One that really resonates with me still, and I still think about constantly, is the Bailey School Kid book series, which they always had like these kids in these situations where they may or may not have been in contact with like supernatural beings and the paranormal, and that kind of aren't they always really fascinated me. The same goes with Goosebumps, and I think that's kind of what made me love sci-fi and horror so much. And one of the books that really stands out to me when I think of those books is Aliens Don't Wear Braces. I love this cover. I think of this cover constantly and I want it on a t-shirt. Which is the longest book you have ever read and how many pages was it? The longest book I read was The Executioner's Song by Norman Mailer. It is 1,056 pages long, and I could not tell you what any of those pages are about because, again, I read it for school, for college, and it went in one ear and it went out the other. Next question, what is your favorite book series? I don't read a lot of series. I'm much more of a standalone type of gal. But again, I really like Poppy War series recently. I love those books so much. If you could have Sylvia Moreno Garcia write any premise / setting / etc. as her next book, which would you pick? Just because I'm selfish and I'm interested in myself, I would love for her to explore time and memories as ghosts with shifting timelines, because that's something that really interests me as a reader and as like a consumer of storytelling. I'm thinking of like Haunting of Hill House and Haunting of Bly Manor, right? But they really deal with this concept of like ghosts and time and how everything's kind of interwoven into one of each other. And I would love to see her deal with a topic like this as something a little psychological. I think would really suit her style. And setting wise, I know she's from the border, from the desert, so something to do with the border and the desert I think would be very interesting. Next question, can you read in Spanish? If you can, who taught you? Sí puedo leer en español. Mis papás me enseñaron when I was a baby. Next question is, what book are you currently reading? I'm currently reading 2 books. I'm kind of behind on them, to be honest, because I've been really busy with life stuff. But I'm reading Infinite Country by Patricia Engel and Fat Chance, Charlie Vega by Crystal Maldonado. Next question, what is the book that inspired you? Again, I'm just going to go back to the Bailey School Kids because they're kind of sci-fi and they're very fun and I guess they were the first instance, or one of the first instances in books where, you know, it showed me as a reader that you can take your book wherever you want. It can be whatever genre. It doesn't have to follow any rules or conventions. It can be exactly what you want it to be, you know. I don't think that's necessarily something that had been apparent to me before that. Book that you read 1,000 times. I do not like rereading books. I'm not really into rereading books. The same thing with movies. I don't like rewatching or rereading things, and if they do, there has to be like a substantial length of time in the middle. But a book that I've reread probably 3 times since I first got it is Antigona Gonzalez. Just because it's super short, and I think that, again, the words on the page hold such impact and the spaces between the words hold such impact, and I can't say enough about this book. It's so good. I did a Latinx-a-thon wrap up on it like 2 years ago, so I'll link that if you want to see it. What upcoming book are you most excited to read? The Twilight Zone by Nona Fernandez is one that I really want to read. It is translated. It takes place in the Pinochet regime in Chile. That's all I know about it. I really want to read My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones, which stars this girl who's obsessed with horror films, who kind of finds herself in these horrifying circumstances. Our Way Back to Always by Nina Moreno. I really am excited to go back into the world of Port Coral that we first saw in Donde Rosa Santos. I really, of course, want to read Velvet is the Night by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, which takes place in the 1970s. Mexico City, it's a noir. And I really want to read Remote Control by Nandi Okorafor, and this book's already out, but I really want to read it. Basically, it's about a girl who becomes acquainted with death and they are following her around places. Would you consider doing more vlog style videos? I mean, sure, my life is not that interesting, but it would look probably something like this.
It's been days and weeks and months. Feels like forever since I saw you. I'm forgetting how you felt now. I've never had this much time on my hands. Move the kitchen table out to the lawn. Roll up the rug, the stereo's on. All I can imagine is being in your arms. I want you to know I don't need anything fancy. I just need me and you slow dancing, hills bending, keeping me captive. Heaven's here, it's right where you're standing.
What is your favorite childhood book? Esperanza Rising. I've talked about this book a lot before on this channel, but it's a book that really touched my heart when I read it like in 4th grade. And it's one that I really related to, which I really appreciated it at that time. And yeah, y'all should check it out if you haven't. What are some of your favorite horror books written by Latinx authors? I don't read a lot of Latinx horror books, to be honest. But I started reading The Root of Ice and Salt by Jose Luis Zarate, and it's a reimagining of Dracula's voyage to England filled with gothic imagery and queer desire. I haven't finished it, but I really enjoy what I have read of it, and it's a translated book, and I just think that the concept itself is very interesting. I know somebody did a really good review of it, and I will link it somewhere. Tender as a Flesh, again, I read this one. It's horrifying. Cannibalism, dystopian. I read it just like a few months ago. It's just a terrifying concept. Yeah, I've also heard that Iliac Crest is a great book. Also Samantha Schweblin, I read 2 of her books. She's really good at like the creepy atmosphere and vibe. Her most recent book, Little Eyes, definitely taps into that feeling of someone staring over your shoulder. So yeah. Next question, who are your favorite booktubers? And I love this question because I get to talk about my friends. Jocelyn, Yvette, Priscilla, Kathleen, and Tosh, who are all my Latinx-a-thon co-hosts, are amazing and are so smart and so like well spoken and have like the best thoughts compared to me. So definitely check them out, and I'll be leaving all their channels here or down there. There's also Paola. Paola's videos are always insightful, and the review and critique are always on point. Paola does a lot of interviews with a lot of authors that are so great and honestly underhyped and should be getting all the fucking views in the world. So go check out Paola's channel right now. If one book genre had to go, which one would it be? Self-help / motivational books. I hate those books. I've always hated those books. I blame it on the 2 semesters of 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teenagers that I had to take in middle school that I absolutely hated. I don't find them particularly helpful, and honestly I think it's because I'm not their intended audience. It's because for me motivational books hold a lot of like quote-unquote like white feminism, girl boss, corporate attitude to it that I just don't appreciate. I would rather get self-help / motivational techniques out of a fiction book or a memoir. What's the one book you've cried the hardest to and will never forget those characters because they're your world? I don't really cry when I read books, to be honest, so I don't really know how to answer this question. Yeah. Next question, what is your best experience in life? I mean, living in general, I don't know. I don't know how to answer this, but I mean, I guess just being with the people you feel safe with and loved with, and just like hanging out with them at 3 a.m. I think is like one of the best feelings ever, not to be sappy. What are some of your favorite tropes to read? I love enemies to lovers. I love star-crossed lovers. I love fake romance. Yeah. Most anticipated reads for the year is also, do you have any 5-book / film pairings? I already answered the first part of this question earlier, so I'll just focus on the second part. I would pair Lord of the Flies with the film Monos, which is on Hulu if you are in the States. I don't know where else it is streaming, but Monos is basically a Lord of the Flies retelling, but set in Colombia, and it's really good. It started this amazing young cast, and it deals with like child soldiers in Colombia, which I find very interesting. The next one I would pair is Minari with like any great American novel. I specifically paired it with Grapes of Wrath, but I think any book that falls under that great American novel genre would, or label, would pair perfectly with Minari, because it's such it has that same essence of kind of wanting to find a better life and wanting your family to have a better life. So that's why I paired it together. Minari is such a US-centric story. The next one I had is Ghost Squad paired up with Vampires versus the Bronx, which is on Netflix, I believe. I think they're just so warm. Like the relationship between the kid characters are so warm and friendly. And you can feel the camaraderie, yeah, between each set of kids. They're also Dominican American kids in both instances, so I think that these two things pair perfectly, especially because they're dealing with these kind of supernatural, paranormal beings. The next one I have is The Only Good Indians paired with Wild Indian. Wild Indian is not out yet. It just premiered at Sundance, which is why I bring it up. But they both kind of have really similar themes, and they're both kind of bleak and somber, and kind of have this tinge of horror throughout the entirety of the work. And my last pairing is Parasite with Untamed Shore, just because I think they have very similar vibes in general, but I think that the way they deal with like classism within the specific society that they take place in is very similar. And I think I really do believe that if you enjoy Parasite, you will enjoy Untamed Shore. So read that one. It's out in paperback now. Next question is my favorite 1D song and my favorite Harry Styles song. So my favorite One Direction song is What a Feeling and Spaces. Spaces solely because it gives me all of the Fleetwood Mac Rumors vibes that I want. And What a Feeling gives me Fleetwood Mac but a different way. And then Harry Styles, I really like Fine Line and Ever Since New York. What is a movie adaptation you like better than the book? I really love the book. I just want to preface that by saying I really love this book as well. But Annihilation, I adore the movie Annihilation. I think it's so good, and it's, again, I mentioned earlier that I like sci-fi that makes me have like an existential crisis. This one gave me an existential crisis because like the last act of it is just so trippy. I had the opportunity to watch it in theaters, and it blew my mind away. But I really like the movie, and I appreciate the book too, but the movie. Has the last year changed anything about how you approach your reading? Do you enjoy creative writing yourself? Yes, so the last year has made it easier for me to DNF books. I didn't have a problem with it beforehand, but I find myself DNFing books earlier in the book than I usually did. So if I do not enjoy a book, if I'm not vibing with it, and I'm like 3 chapters in, 2020 has taught me to just quit the book, because there's no need to kind of force yourself into reading something you don't like in a year that is stressful enough. So yeah, do you enjoy creative writing? Yes, I do enjoy creative writing. I kind of write more screenplays rather than novels or short stories. And I have a couple of TV pilots that I wrote, and they're currently being read by people. And yeah, they've gotten good feedback so far, so I'm just kind of polishing them up and hoping to submit them to like fellowship competitions and stuff, which is exciting. What movie adaptation of a book disappointed you the most? Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark was horrible. I hated the movie adaptation. And I was so disappointed because it's produced by Guillermo del Toro, and it's literally trash. I adored these books when I was a kid. They freaked me out so much, and the movie just was incredibly disappointing, and I just didn't understand anything that was happening in it at all. The next question is, which fictional character do you relate to the most? Which again is a difficult question, so I don't know how to answer it exactly, but I think that a character that kind of has stood out to me throughout the years and I always kind of think of and gravitate towards is definitely Jo March from Little Women. I love Jo March. I love that she is a writer, and I love how she's stubborn, and I love how she kind of lived the life she wanted to live. So yeah, Jo. I love Jo. What are your most anticipated book releases? I already answered that earlier, so I'm not gonna repeat it. Next question, what's a book from your childhood that you'll never forget? I already answered that one too, so I'm not gonna repeat it. What's your favorite movie of the decade? And not really a question, but can you talk about your favorite piece for film she's been so far? So apparently I watched 419 movies in 2010, so this was hard for me. So I just went by my letterboxd, like top movies. So that would be 10 Cloverfield Lane and Ex Machina. Sometimes I have film broy tastes, and so that's why these are my picks. But I really, really like these movies, both of them. Movies that are kind of really fucked up when you think about it. Yeah. I also really liked Hunt for the Wilder People, which is 2016. I love that movie. I always recommend it to everybody, so this is me recommending it to y'all. Watch Hunt for the Wilder People. I think it's on Prime and Canopy, if you want to say. But it's a really good coming of age story in New Zealand, and I love it. And my favorite piece for film she's been so far, basically anytime I get to interview a filmmaker, I think it's really cool. I just love learning how they navigate their own craft and how they I guess start their process and end their process, and just learning about them and what they do and where their passions are, I think is incredibly interesting. Next question, did you ever have any idea about writing a book? If you were to write it, then what will it be, its plot? Yes. I don't want to say the plot, but yes. Books, totally. I have a cemetery of works in progress. Most of the things that I write are science fiction and deal with things. Pick a book you really like and give 3 to 5 movie recommendations for a similar vibe. So the book I chose was Scythe, or the Scythe series, and the similar vibes are or 2 of them are TV shows. And one of them is Legion on FX, which is already over, but you can watch on Hulu. The other one is Devs on FX, which is also over, but you can also watch on Hulu. And then The Lobster. Yep, those are my picks. What was the one book that made you think, and think as in just go in and out of all the deep thoughts, more like one book that hit you real hard and made you feel and think about a lot of things? So I picked When They Call You a Terrorist, a Black Lives Matter memoir by Patrice Cullors and Asha Bandel, and it has a foreword by Angela Davis. I think this memoir is just so incredibly lyrical in the way that it's written, and then content-wise just so powerful. And I feel like it should be recommended reading for kids in school, you know? And it's just so beautiful. It's such a great book and a great memoir, and I think everybody should read it, is what I'm getting at. At your back, in a reserve of things, if you could choose any films to be made into books, which ones would you pick and why? And what would you like the books to address that the film didn't? So I chose to choose 2 newer films, because I think that there's a lot of classics that I wouldn't want to touch at all. So I chose Promising Young Woman and Hereditary. Promising Young Woman is already out, I think, but I had a chance to watch it earlier this year, and Hereditary a couple years ago, and I would just, because of the genre and because of the topics that both movies touch on, I would just love to get a deeper dive into them. So in Promising Young Woman, I would just love to get a deeper insight into the main character's mind, and you know, where her head's at, and where the head at, and where, you know, where everyone else's heads are at as well. I just want to know more about her. You know, that's one of the things with that film. Throughout the entirety of it, you're not really given that much of a, I guess, you aren't given that much closeness to her as a character, and it was probably on purpose, but I would have loved to learn a little bit more about her. And with Hereditary, I just wanted to know more about the lore that was going on behind the scenes of everything, kind of at the backdrop. And yeah, those were all the questions. Thank you to everybody that submitted questions. I'm putting my phone on top of the camera so it'll give my face the light, since the natural light of the day is like leaving. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Giveaway winner time, the moment of truth. I put everybody's name in this very cool picker wheel thing, and I'm going to spin right now. And the winner is Eternal Reader. So you can just leave me a comment down below with the best way to contact you, or you can email me at my email address, which I'm going to be putting right here, and we can get in contact with all the little details and that stuff, and I can send you your prize. How exciting!